Denzel Washington has a new movie coming out called The Tragedy of Macbeth, which is directed by Joel Cohen of the Coen brothers and co stars Frances McDormand. And during a carpet event where they premiered the movie at the New York Film Festival, Denzel Washington was asked a question with his wife beside him about porter, the horseback border patrol outrage, and expecting an answer, I'm sure that most of Hollywood gives, calling it racist, you know, saying all the typical propaganda based answers. Denzel Washington's reply was not a Hollywood reply because when he was asked the question about the horseback border patrol photo outrage, this is what he responded with. He stated, quote, the enemy is their inner me. So everybody should take a look in the mirror first and figure out how they can be better at who they are. You know, it's easy to point fingers. We live in a world of opinions. Everybody has one, so we don't need yet another one from me. But we're on God's side, and that's what we're all about, and that's the way we fight our battles. We're in the world, but we're not of it. End quote. Now, that's not an answer that a typical Holly weirdo would give, and it's very fitting for Denzel Washington because he has a lot of past comments. He has comments where he always champions law enforcement and the military, and he's been in a lot of movies where he's played a police officer or someone of the military. And during previous press junkets, other Holly weird questions were thrown up at him. Like he was promoting one movie which involved the justice system, and he was asked a question about the justice system being racist. And he gave a response by highlighting a 11-year-old killer called Lil Yummy, and how children in Chicago pay tribute to Lil Yummy, and how he murdered people at 11, and then he got murdered at 11 by a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old. And he basically posed the question, where was his father? How was his household? That's the reply that he gave, basically calling out the bullshit narrative that never wants to get to the root of the issue. They just want to blame the so called system, even though Hollywood is the main ones that are a part of that very same system. And we see it today with all of their advocacy for Joe Biden and all the bullshit from Big Pharma. And also, Denzel Washington pretty much browbeated Hollywood during a director's roundtable for Denzel Washington's Fences, where he basically went into detail about 4 minutes and 29 seconds into the video, where he stated how movies are just movies. They aren't this precious thing. They aren't hard. And he basically stated, if you want to see what hard is, try to send your child to Iraq. Try to deal with your child getting shot in the face while fighting for his country. Like, that's hard. Movies are just movies. And basically telling his colleagues to get over yourself. So him giving this response, basically saying we live in a world of opinions, that's a very neatly way of him calling out other people who are always spouting their self-importance because of their position as an actor and the media enabling them to think they're more important than they are. And he's basically saying, hey, just check yourself and see the good that you're doing. That's what matters, because it's easy to point the finger. It just shows a level of consistency that he's shown in multiple interviews where he hasn't given the typical Harley weirdo answer. And so I just want to acknowledge that and give it its just due, because it goes to show you once again you don't have to give the typical bullshit answers that is expected out of you, especially if you have an established name, especially if you have an established name and established success for yourself. Because no one can deny what Denzel says. In response to this bullshit question in the interview, the interviewer gave him. So again, boycott Hollywood, defund it. Denzel has his money; he doesn't need it. So even though he's giving these great answers and responses that all these fucktards should be giving, I still don't support any movie that gets made from the mainstream Hollywood. And you shouldn't support it either, because look at what they're doing. They're always trying to instigate and incite outrage and then try to blame white supremacy for it when riots happen. There are the other scum of the earth, and Denzel Washington is proof that you don't always have to take the bullshit bait. Also, I'd like to point out this other story for why Denzel Washington's name is in the news. Apparently, some white liberal bitch that he worked with on Grey's Anatomy called Ellen. Well, apparently he was directing her in an episode, and she admitted in an interview recently yelling at Denzel and calling him a motherfucker. And now Twitter and people on social media are on her ass. And this is just another incident where someone like a Claire or someone like a Brittany realizes where they are on the totem pole, on the hierarchy. Because she tried to test the ground, because as we've seen in the mainstream media, there is a green light where you can attack black males, but it depends on what type of black males. And she found out that Denzel, as it stands, isn't the one that is being allowed to be attacked just yet. But while people are paying attention to what this white liberal bitch had to say, about an actress disagreeing with a director, which I'm sure is common, everybody seems to forget how not too long ago you had the dude chick called Lena Waithe who dared to call out Will Smith and Denzel Washington specifically for not financing films with black talent, because apparently she had some type of hissy fit, because I assume she tried to approach Denzel or Denzel's people so she can, put on one of her, I don't know, lesbo TV shows or movies with Denzel's backing. And apparently he didn't get back to her, Denzel or Will Smith's company. Well, I'm sure Will Smith will get back to her, because he's a simp and all. But Denzel didn't get back to her. And she didn't get the backlash that she deserved. It didn't last that long. Why? Because, she's a lesbo black female. And believe it or not, someone like Lena Waithe is ranked higher on the hierarchy or on the totem pole than someone like Denzel Washington, because Denzel Washington is a black, presumably heterosexual male, that raised a family. And, that's not the type of image that they want to represent. I mean, again, if you check the Black Lives Matter about section, they stated specifically they were about dismantling the nuclear family. So while this Ellen bitch, gets her wake up call and realizes she ain't ranked as high as she thought she was as a white liberal moron, which is again why I feel no sympathy for when white liberal morons get their wake up calls. But while people are focusing on that bitch, Lena Waithe, who I'm sure is always invited to the cookout, she's allowed to disrespect Denzel Washington and ignore all of his contributions, to the Boys and Girls Club. Hell, as a director with movies like Antoine Fisher, with The Great Debaters, with Fences, and he was a part of the project that was Chadwick Boseman's final project. Like all that stuff, just ignored. I mean, we heard about how he even helped out Omar Hardwick, I think his name is, the dude that was on Power. When he was down bad. Just ignore all that because the bitch couldn't get what she wanted out of Denzel. But because she's a little lesbo chick, she's allowed to be disrespectful and not called out in the same way that Ellen is being called out right now. Which, you can almost kind of understand actors calling directors motherfucker because we've heard about actors and directors having beef before. So it's really not that much of a big deal, but it's worthy of being highlighted because it's another white liberal bitch realizing that, oh, I'm not ranked as high as I thought. But again, being woke costs, and you have to know your place constantly, and your place is always constantly changing when you play into these woke games. Which the recent winner of a reality competition show called Big Brother found out. First black winner, and he's chased off of Twitter because he's been called coon all season by the very same people who supported this Cookout alliance, which is based on the commonly used phrase welcoming people to the cookout. Yeah, the winner of that reality competition show season, the first black winner, got called coon by the very same supporters. So, even though Denzel right now is being defended by the against this Ellen bitch, please believe if Denzel keeps making comments that don't align with the lip-tarded way of thinking, if he's not pushing victimhood complexes, especially in the 2020s where they've seemed to upgraded their tyranny and pushing their ideology, please believe Denzel himself will eventually get called coons and sellouts and be disgraced in the public eye by the mainstream. Right now, due to his tenure and him still having a pretty decent fan base, is the only reason why that they haven't even went there with him yet. And I'm sure the way they would try to get at him would be through his wife. And I think that's the only thing that's really keeping him in the good graces, because I do believe he stumbled upon marrying an actual good woman, because she doesn't disrespect her husband, she don't talk shit, she plays her role, unlike Aisha Curry or all these other modern day chicks that end up getting married. They always got some fucking mouth, especially if their man is famous. I mean, hell, just look at Jada Pinkett. Bitch should be grateful she would be on the chitlin circuit of TV1 and BET and church plays if it wasn't for Will. But here she is constantly disrespecting him, and pretty much laughing at him when she talks about cheating on his dumbass. But again, that's probably the difference between Will Smith, who's a weak simp ass bitch, and Denzel Washington, who seems to be old school and still have that alpha old school mentality. But yeah, anyway, just another example of the hierarchy of the woke and how black males in this whole cookout world are still vulnerable to being called out, no matter how successful they are or how much they are tenured in any particular field. And, like I said, if Denzel keeps you know, not giving the Hollywood answer or giving the woke answer, he'll be at risk as well. And it's just proof that being invested in this woke shit, especially if you're a male, there's no benefit for you, none at all. Unless you're willing to bend over and cross dress, there's no benefit for you. There's no benefit for anyone really engaging in this woke cookout bullshit. But, people with handicapped mentalities in subhuman ways, they rely on this bullshit. And it's pathetic and sad.